Hey guys, so just a quick introduction to this interview. I wake up at about 5:36 a.m. in the morning every day for work. And I had a pretty busy plate. I went to work, I worked until about 3, and then I drove into the city for Keystone Con and did an interview there, which will be dropping tomorrow. And I'll talk all about Keystone Con and that. And then after Keystone Con, I drove out to Wilmington, Delaware for a live event called 90s Night with Danny and Mike of Pete and Pete. And I'm pretty sure that was the name. I don't know. It was a 90s night. That's the important thing. It was at a bar called 1984. It's a really sweet barcade. There might be more horror movie night stuff happening there in the near future. And I was supposed to have an interview with Danny and Mike of the Adventures of Danny and Mike podcast, or how you know them, Big and Little Pete. And we didn't actually get to do the interview until about 12:30 at night. And I was very tired. So I actually have no recollection of this interview. So it's making me a little nervous about putting it out, if I'm going to be honest. But I think we had a good time. I remember laughing a lot. So that's got to be a good sign, I hope. But if I seem a little groggy, or if you call into question, is your favorite straight edge co-host still straight edge? I am. This is not stoned or anything. This is very, very tired. So I hope you enjoy it, and please go and check out the Adventures of Danny and Mike podcast. I'm putting this out just in time for anybody that lives in the Columbus area to go check out their event that's happening tonight in Columbus. But then beyond that, you can check their website for all their tour dates and try to catch them during the tour. It's a really cool little like games and live podcast, and then just hanging out. And they are really, really fucking cool dudes, to be totally honest. Mike just seems to memorize everybody's names. I was impressed as he was talking to myself and a bunch of random friends of mine. He just knew everybody. And I also want to do a real quick shout out to Studio House. It's a company that does VHS themed t-shirts. I was rocking my Studio House baseball tee at this show, and just so many compliments. I bumped into another person rocking a Studio House shirt. And, you know, Mike even took a picture of my Studio House shirt to send to a friend of his who actually does a podcast that Scott listens to a lot called Scored to Death. So it was a very weird, small world type situation. I guess it truly is a small world after all. Anyway, you aren't listening to this episode because you want to hear my rambling. You want to hear the opinions of Danny and Mike. So let's go to this quick little 10-minute interview that we did standing outside the 1984 in Wilmington, Delaware at about 12:30 at night. Enjoy.
So I worked with Michael Lehman, who directed that movie. Michael Lehman directed Heathers on 40 Days and 40 Nights.
Which you played Bagel Guy.
Bagel Guy. He directed
that
movie, film as well.
I think that is a greatly underappreciated little teen flick, actually.
It's a 20-something sex comedy, but thank you.
Whatever. Take the compliment.
It's true. That's true. I'm bad. I'm bad with boys. No boys.
All right, guys. So I am standing outside of a venue right here with Mike and Danny of the podcast, The Adventures of Danny and Mike.
That's right. That was like a mirror speak.
That's equal opportunity, and I really respect that.
That's how I roll.
I like it.
You're both. I mean, theoretically, I'd like to say that JB should be here, but we also know that we don't want to boost that ego too much
You don't
over
want to
there.
boost his ego, and you don't want to make him hobble over here.
That's kind of the bigger
Either
one.
of those, we could get an ego injury. There's no injury yet tonight, so.
Well, I'll step on his foot.
But just real quick, so I've been talking about your guys' show pretty much any chance that I can on our podcast, which is Horror Movie Night. I should probably get better at addressing that at the start of things.
Horror Movie Night.
Yes, it's a comedy show about bad horror films from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, boy.
There's a never-ending laundry list of
You should have
options.
my buddies Blake and Dion on, who do Saturday Night Sleepovers. Those guys would probably love, probably right up your alley.
I'll have to hit it. I think we've talked that Blake. I think Blake is actually a friend of my co-host Scott's. So I know that's something that might be already in the works.
Good idea. Scored to Death is a good one, too.
It is a solid show if you like horror soundtracks. So, where did the adventures of Danny and Mike stem from? Obviously, it stems from you guys being on Pete and Pete, but have you guys just maintained friendship from the second that show ended, or was there a long separation?
We had some collegiate pauses, I would say. Someone went to college. I was in high school.
Someone finished
someone
college.
Finished
someone
college.
didn't.
Someone went to New York.
Someone dropped
Someone
out.
ran into each other outside a Beastie Boys concert in Brooklyn, and I, might have been hungover and puked in between a couple
He
cars.
was dehydrated. He was
Very
definitely dehydrated. I was
And it's
dehydrated from playing soccer.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike. Haven't seen you in 5 years.
It was almost like that. It was almost exactly
It
like that.
almost was exactly like that. It was one of those moments. It was like, oh fuck. But we ended up doing some P&P reunion things that were really fun, and we just wanted to keep it going, speed on down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not standing outside. That's just fantastic
It's
ADR
just
work.
good ADR work. Yes. I get paid a lot of money to sound like a speeding car.
Speaking of John Carpenter's Christine, it's really the only movie. It's the only movie that he didn't have a hand in writing. All the other ones, he's kind of an auteur, but this came from a Stephen King script, and he didn't have anything to do with writing it.
Thank you.
Oh, that was an unprompted horror reference. I like it.
I appreciate it. So
I'll keep
you've
mine
been
in my back pocket until someone asks me a fucking question, Michael.
So right now we're standing outside of the 1984, and you just did a 90s night, which is interesting choice to pick a place that's year is 1984 for a 90s
Yeah,
night.
it was an
Delaware.
accident. I actually thought it was 1994 until
You
we
also
pulled up.
thought it was at 215 West 4th Street as opposed to 2511.
Yeah,
East
well,
4th
our
Street.
booking agent was going to get fired.
Notes from the tour.
Yes.
I said puppet show underneath Danny and Mike.
I said if we can't find a place that's in a shopping center next to a Chinese takeout place, I ain't playing.
Luckily, we had a place that fit the bill, and here we are.
Well, there you go.
Jeremy wanted the pharmacy because he needs
Painkillers.
Tylenol 3.
It's like 3 Tylenols in one.
So I actually mentioned this movie to Mike while we were standing inside, and I think he thought I was joking, but I was at least moderately sincere that we have probably referenced the movie Slackers more on this podcast than almost any other movie.
It's a good one.
It's and I would
Do you
ask,
even know my name? Yeah.
that scene was then stolen for a commercial.
It was?
There was definitely a commercial that did that exact same scene, and I got very defensive about.
There's a lot of the problem is that no, I didn't. I actually probably didn't improv that line, but I improv'd a bunch of lines in Slackers, so you may not.
You wouldn't know it by his improvisational skills of the show tonight, but he does improv stuff. He does. I'm just.
You wouldn't know from Danny's haircut, but he's actually an incredible rocker.
Well, but that's. But I think
He's a really gifted musician, despite his haircut.
Well, I think that's the real charm,
really
though,
all
of
I'm
listening
hating
to your guys'
today,
podcast, is that you guys both have. You can just shoot the shit.
Again, I didn't take the compliment well. Thank you. We don't ever talk about Slackers. That might be the one unwritten rule of our relationship. We don't really talk about Mighty Ducks, and we don't really talk about.
It's one of those weird movies that you're like stoned in college and your friend puts on Slackers and you're like, again.
But here's the thing.
Well, that's cool.
I
Which of-
watch it every time and I was
gonna
like,
say,
yes, Mike.
That's
yeah.
cool. Which of your friends is obsessed with me? Just checking. Just checking.
He was in my wedding party, bro, with you. I'll never sell him out.
I was in your wedding
That's
party.
what I'm saying.
That's
he was
what
right
counts.
next to you and you didn't even know.
Brothers.
He was geeking out.
He was geeking out so hard.
It's like, that's the guy whose penis thing she'll be coming around the mountain.
It wasn't for the last time. It wasn't my penis.
This is
And
probably the fourth time he's gotten that tonight.
This
And, like, a
guy
couple of
introduced
years,
himself to me at the rap party. And he's like, a lot of people are giving me credit, giving you credit for my work.
So you're were like, thank you.
I'm actually not.
For your penis puppet work.
You know what? An assist is just as many points as a goal these days. So.
That's true.
Shit.
We have a lot of fun. Thank you.
But I think that's what makes the show so enjoyable. The second that I listen to it, because there's a lot of people who do shows where it's like, hey, we used to be on a show together, and now we're doing a podcast, and it's basically just
Name them. I'll fucking kill them. Who?
There's Squadcast. The guys from Monster Squad do a podcast together. But
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, Fred Savage?
No. That's the Wonder Years.
Devin No, they did a movie called The Monster Squad.
The Monster Squad.
Monster Squad.
Ryan
The movie.
Wolfman's
got
got nards. Come on.
Yeah. Andre
What?
Gowan.
Oh my god.
I thought
Wolfman don't got nards.
Am I thinking of a different
Wolfman's
movie?
got
Wasn't Fred
nards.
Savage?
Are you thinking of Little Monsters?
Little Monster?
There you
Yeah, him and Howie Mandel just do this podcast every week where they just
Remember
recount
that?
the
Hey, you remember
memories
that?
of
Yeah.
Monster Squad. Or Little Monsters.
Fred
And he and
Savage
Nick,
directed
and Howie Mandel and Nick Cannon were doing a podcast until Nick Cannon got fired from America's Got
He said,
Talent.
sorry,
And he
germs.
said, sorry, I can't do it.
Too many
I
germs.
also can't do the podcast anymore.
Oh, so that we're kind of breaking the trend then by staying together,
Yes,
is what you're saying.
But I think the other big thing is that you very rarely talk about Pete and Pete.
You know what's funny is it pops in and out more when like guests are on who like the show, and like it'll candidly come out and they'd be like, so you know, I watch the show. Man.
That's great. Yeah, it kind of
And then
becomes
we, like,
it's
talk
like a
about it
side
for a
part.
second.
It's not the overriding theme.
And I think that's what's really cool about the show is you guys go an hour, and you are very strict on that hour. I love...
You notice it's pretty much an hour.
You call it out. Well, I think it was this week's episode. There was like a point where you were about to wrap up, and you're like, hey, man, we got 10 more minutes on the clock. Like, you were very strict on that hour.
That was
and,
me,
and
right?
you would know, and and that was me getting an eye from Mike being like, I got to work at 6 a.m. tomorrow. And
Yeah.
I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
He was like wrapping it up, and I was like, what do you mean we're not wrapping it
I
up?
was
And he
pissed.
gave me the death stare that
I was pissed. I've been
the
doing
audience couldn't see.
I've been doing stage rigging in the Brooklyn Navy Yard for the listener. We have a lot of studios there, but it just means waking up at 4:45. So I was trying to get to bed early. And
Well, I mean, it was really important that you guys
It
discussed
happens.
whatever the fuck again for an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, it must have been gold. That last 10 minutes.
yeah, you didn't. I noticed in the last mini we didn't really cover my Verizon job too well, but it didn't really matter either.
Oh, yeah.
Well, where is the best place for people to check out the show? Because I know that right now I'm looking at the clock, and you guys have a long
Danny
drive
and Mike.
tomorrow.
You got DannyandMike.com
Yeah, DannyandMike.com.
with the and spelled out.
Which is anything that you can't use an ampersand in
That's Web
Internet speak.
3.0. You will.
the Web 3.0.
Yeah, we're in Web 2.0 right now. So Web 3.0, you're going to be able to use that Shift key. Have
Anything
you heard of the
Danny
Shift?
and Mike, you can do Instagram and Twitter. Look, I'm rapping it. Twitter and DannyandMike.com. And we're on the Last Podcast Network, which is,
A strong podcast network.
Yeah, very, very excellent
It's
stuff on
it's like
there.
most
Curated
popular
very well.
podcast in like half of the states.
I just said, I've
country.
been holding this in my back pocket.
I was going to ask,
so-
what's the horror fact?
Oh no! Don't ask him. Oh, it's a trap.
So when I was in like, 6th, 7th grade, and you'd have sleepovers with your friends, and you go to Blockbuster, we'd always get a fucked up horror film and then a comedy to if we were too scared at the end, to smooth out. And we rented this movie called Necromantic 2.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it was.
porno,
We
dude.
got it. No, we got it because it was like this chick, in a bikini with like a chainsaw, and we were like, yes!
Yeah, it's got all the things we like.
And the
Girls,
first scene,
chainsaw.
dude, the first scene is this guy getting fucked, and then he's like, and then the woman kills him, and she's like, and then there's blood in the it was fucked up, and I was
You guys-
12 years old. I was like, oh my god,
What
this
did your
is fucked
schoolmates
up.
think about this?
We were all like, we're pretty cool now. We saw that shit.
I think
So the question is, what's the comedy that you guys watch to take the edge off?
Sucker Proxy.
also
think-
directed
I think that
directed
was-
by Michael Lehman.
I think that was
Hudson
exactly.
Hawk. Hudson Hawk
That was it.
released the same year. I think.
I 100% fact. It went Necromantic 2,
Coen
Hudsucker
Brothers.
Proxy.
Yeah, Coen
Tim
Brothers.
Robbins creating a hula hoop. That's a really good transition.
You want to go light, and Paul Newman jumping out of a window.
That's like pickled ginger after a sushi is an excellent.
I'm glad I could bestow my little horror bit of knowledge.
Well, thank you so much, guys.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.